And hi everyone, welcome to eLearnChat, where it is all about learning and having a little bit of fun too while we're at it. I am Rick Zanotti, and I am joined today by Dr. Susan Nash, who still has not made the show. She may be stuck somewhere. Hopefully she'll be on. And we also have with us, well, let's see, in his studio we've got Harold Muliati. He's our video producer today. He's mic'd up, but he's not on screen. Hey, Harold.
Hello.
And our guest today is David Kelly, Executive Director for the eLearning, well, actually the Learning Guild. And we're going to talk about DevLearn and other things happening at the Guild. Here we go. This show is sponsored by Relate Corporation. Visit us at www.relatecasts.net. Thanks. And there he is, Dave Kelly. How you doing, David?
Hi, Rick. How you doing?
I am doing great. It's good to see you again. And I was telling you a little bit pre-show. Unfortunately, we can't make it we're in the middle of a whole mess of projects. And this year, darn, I really wanted to go. I want to go anywhere right now. It's just we've been stuck. I think we have not left California in over a year and a half. It's like, please help. Help us get out. So it would have been fun to go to the show, and it just hit right when we got hit by projects, all the premieres at once, and we went shoot. And some of them are video shoots where we need to be there. So anyway, next year we're hoping to go to one or two more shows. So hopefully we'll see you then. But we're jealously happy for you getting to go out there. And have you been doing any traveling?
I did a little traveling this year. I took one family trip earlier, I think in June, and went to a show earlier this year to speak at a show, and that was the first conference I've been to in a year and a half.
Wow. Yep.
So it's good. It's good fun to be getting back out there.
And Susan joined us in flight. Hi, Susan.
Hi there.
Anyway, we did announce that you were.
Finding the link. Yeah.
No, oh, no fun. We announced everybody, so everybody knows you're here, and now you're here.
Yeah.
And we were just talking to David about traveling anywhere. Susan's a world traveler. She hasn't gone anywhere pretty much in about a year and a half, other than I think you've been to Houston and maybe Colorado.
Yes, I've been to Houston and Denver, and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, no fun. It's more fun to go out and travel.
It is.
It's good to have things open up again soon.
Hey, in England, did they do the show in January or February?
Not this year, but they're looking forward to doing it. The one in 2022, early 22.
Okay, yeah, that's a fun show. That's a big show too. Is that is that the biggest of your shows right now?
That in terms of the expo, yeah, that is our largest exhibition. And in terms of the floor traffic as well, on an average year, it brings in about 10,000 people. 10,000,
yeah, that's pretty good. And DevLearn gets about 4,000 usually, right? A little bit more.
Yeah. I mean, right now everything's a little in flux, but in an average year, it gets about 4,000 people.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I remember when it first started, there weren't that many. So you guys have done a great job with that show. It's a fun show too.
Yeah, I mean, we have a great time. It's a great community. It grows. It's the people come every year over year, and it's nice. That community has grown. I mean, I've been with the Guild for almost 9 years, but the show's 15 years old, and every single year, it just seems like more and more people join the community, which is nice to see.
That's great.
Oh yeah, I think I went to early ones, and I really enjoyed it. But how have things changed over the years? Because I mean, e-learning has evolved so much, especially in the last 2 years.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's one of the things that's always been nice about DevLearn. It's one of the reasons it's always resonated with me. I mean, the theme of the show is always around shaping what's next. So we're always exploring what the emerging technologies are, how they can be applied to learning, how they change our practice, how our practice evolves over time. And I think that's one of the things that's always made the show attractive to people is the fact that they have the opportunity to come and get some real-world practical lessons on things they can do today, but also get a glimpse on what's happening tomorrow and how it's shaping the future of our field and how they can prepare for that.
Well, that brings up another question. What do you see as the current trend? What's new this year aside from online learning being more prevalent finally, and what do you see as coming up? What's the next big thing?
Well, there's the next big. I mean, it depends on how big of a time frame that you have. I mean, the next big thing in the short term for me, in like the next maybe year to 3 years, is all about value. It's all about. I mean, we've had a, for better or for worse, we've had a spotlight placed on online learning over the last 18 months that has opportunities and risk in it, in the sense that there are people paying attention to online learning that have never paid attention to it before. You've got parents who suddenly find themselves supporting people who are doing online learning, and they've never had to do that before. It's on everybody's radar in a cultural sense in ways it's never been before, which has opportunities and risks attached to it. And I think that when the pandemic first started, the value proposition for a lot of us was, did school happen today? Did training happen today? Were we able to do this thing that's normally face-to-face? Were we able to figure out a way to do it online? And now that it's been going on for a while and more people are getting a little bit more accustomed to it, there's a little bit more of a focus on, is it effective? Are we doing it well? Are we getting the best possible experience from people? So I think that over the next year or two, there is going to be that increased focus and accountability around, are we doing the right thing? Is it effective? And I think that we will be seeing more and more and more of that over at least the next 2 years, while we continue to have this spotlight placed on online education through the lingering effects of the pandemic.
What I'm seeing is a huge focus these days on in blended Zoom or asynchronous and synchronous, not in synchronous and asynchronous as in face-to-face and asynchronous, but Zoom and asynchronous rather than all synchronous, which was how I think a lot of people started. They said, okay, well, we have to switch to online, and this isn't early in the pandemic. We'll just do 100% synchronous. And people quickly got Zoom burnout and just didn't pay attention, turned off their cameras. But then by having punctuated synchronous and asynchronous, I see that as a more effective strategy, but not everyone knows the best practices.
Yeah, and I think part of the challenge is finding out what is the right mix for your particular context. That's what a lot of people are working at. I mean, to your point, when most people had their world disrupted, whether it's in a corporate environment or in an academic environment, the solution was, let's turn on our cameras and we'll do what we do on the camera, and that was the default. And that worked out really, really well. When you have 48 hours to figure out how you're going to do what you need to do, that was an effective Band-Aid. But yeah, now that we're a little bit more through that, we've got to figure out more mature models. We've got to figure out how to adapt it to our context. And we got to, step away from the default. I've always felt that the L&D field is often held back by the comfort of a default, whether it's classroom training by default, or e-learning by default, or Zoom rooms by default. The default is what holds us back. I think all of those things have value, but where the value can get diminished is when we just default to something because it's comfortable, it's what we know, even though it may not necessarily be the best modality or best solution given a certain context.
Oh, I totally agree. And I think also it's easy to lose focus on how to modify the assessments and how to tie back to learning objectives and modify the assessments in that type of environment as well.
Absolutely.
No, it is interesting. It is interesting how we created a new verb over the last year and a half or so, and that's let's Zoom. Let's get together and do a Zoom. Yeah, and it's funny because Zoom's been around for quite a few years, but look at WebEx, look at all they never became verbs. Now it's like, yeah, we got to have a Zoom. Let's Zoom it. Zoom, Zoom, Zoom. And Zoom has grown. Last I looked, there were about 7 billion. And I think they may be bigger right now. It's just amazing how far they've grown in such a short time.
It really is. And it's for better or for worse for them. I mean, because I think that on both ends of it, on one end, it has become a verb. It's almost like a Kleenex, where it's like, let me have a Kleenex. No, you want a tissue. Kleenex is a brand. And I think Zoom is the same thing, but at the same time, you have the flip side of that, where everyone says that they have Zoom fatigue, and it's not it's not Zoom fatigue, it's video conferencing fatigue.
Right.
Zoom is the brand.
Yep.
So it's an interesting paradigm. I bet you. I think if you looked at their where they're at in terms of a cap value, that I think they're okay with balancing those risks, right?
Yep. That's true. I kind of like, and the other one that came up out of nowhere, I don't even know if they existed before. I think they did, but I never looked at, was Teams. Everybody's on Teams. I like Teams. I like Zoom too, but Teams is sort of more fun for what we do. And it works pretty well. And the fact that they're not really charging for it is pretty amazing. It's a pretty good product. And again, not the easiest to do training with, but you can. Now, Susan, you're doing most of your training on Zoom, right?
No. I'm doing, well, it depends on what it is. But if it's technical training, it's with Zoom, with some materials. But if it's, but also using Canvas but also I've done some technical training with one of the worst solutions I can think of, which was Google Class. Because, oh my goodness. I mean, okay, we're talking about how Microsoft, that Teams came up and worked out. Well, Google, I mean, that just hasn't kept up in terms of functionality. And then the Google Meet doesn't have all the different functionalities that Zoom has. But Zoom has, I think, succeeded because it's simple, as opposed to, say, Big Blue Button or even Adobe Web Connect or GoToMeeting, etc.
Yeah, I think that's been a major thing over the last couple of years. I mean, we credit Zoom with it, but I think a lot of these applications, there's no training for them. They're that simple to use that the average user can come in and use them. I mean, I've used Zoom in the context of tech support for people that I have in my family that they don't use computers very well, but they can open a Zoom room and they can see the prompt that comes up when I say I want to take control of your screen. They can see that prompt and click yes. It just works, and I think that Teams is a similar thing where I personally, in my own experience, I find Teams not to be as user friendly, but having it fully integrated into the Microsoft suite that we're all using. Adds a layer that Zoom doesn't, that it's just fully integrated. So finding that solution that works in your particular environment. I mean, I know the stuff that we're doing at the Guild, for a lot of the stuff that we do for our community, many times we'll use Zoom because for what we're doing, it's simple, it's easy, people are familiar with it, and we can work it. If we need to do something that's a little bit more in depth, a little bit more complex in some of the experiences we're shaping, maybe we'll go back to something like a Connect or one of the more robust things that do a little bit more complex interactions that we might be looking to shape for people. But for the everyday stuff that people are using to connect and share with one another, these tools have just become so ubiquitous and so easy to use that I think that's part of the reason they've grown so quickly.
And they're not even that expensive.
Yeah.
Zoom's pretty reasonable right now. They were never that expensive, but they've gotten pretty reasonable, and they still made a fortune. Pretty good. They've done that well.
I'm surprised that they're not partnering with somebody like SoftChalk, because, many times when you share the screen, at least in training, the next thing you do is you share your PowerPoint or whatever, and SoftChalk has the ability to put in a lot of the different engagers and poll questions and quizzes and all different types of things. So it's kind of like a souped up PowerPoint.
I thought Zoom could do some more interactivity now like that. No?
They're always. It seems like every time I launch Zoom, it says there's an update pending. They're changing it all the time. And I know we recently started looking at, they just started releasing Zoom Events, which has some additional functionality around how Zoom rooms can be packaged and such. So they're always changing new things. And I'm always checking out, they have beta features that you can try out before they're really rolled out.
Yeah.
And some of those have some interaction.
Yeah, they probably have that. I like what you're saying. Yeah.
That's pretty good. So as far as the show goes, it's next week. Is it, I think, Wednesday through Friday?
Yeah, we have some pre-conference events on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, but the conference itself starts on Wednesday.
So what can people expect this year? What's new, different, other than people would be so glad to probably get out and go see a conference? What's new?
Well, I think as much as there's always something new at DevLearn, I honestly do think that this is a little bit of going back to the basics. This is a little bit of just the fact that we're able to do this, the fact that we're able to gather together and be together physically as a community. in a way that emphasizes health and safety. That's the core thing here, and we're really looking forward to that. And if that was all we were able to deliver, I think people would just be happy to be together this year. There's that element. But for this year, we're still exploring what's new. I mean, obviously, there's going to be a lot of case studies and such that are shared around what we've learned during the pandemic, how we've pivoted during the pandemic. A lot of people sharing a lot of great experiences that they've gone through. There's always the typical DevLearn stuff of here's some new technologies, what are their applications, how is it going to change, how can we put them into use in L&D. A lot of great things being showcased in the expo this year of innovations. I mean, that's one of the things that is unique about this year. It's not all, DevLearn is an annual conference. We weren't able to get together last year. So you're not just seeing a year's worth of evolving change. You're seeing 2 years worth of evolving change within what's gone on in the industry. So there's a double leap, so to speak, in terms of some of the updates you're going to see. So I'm excited about a lot of that because we haven't been able to gather as a community, especially in our expo hall, and see what's gone on in the vendor space and see how things have evolved and advanced. And I think people are going to see some interesting changes when they go walking through those halls.
That's good.
New cat filters. I want a new cat filter.
Absolutely. That's the most important thing.
I think what you're doing is really exciting.
Yeah. I mean, we're excited for the show. It's been a long time coming, and I have to give credit to everybody on our team. When you're dealing with the effects of something like a pandemic, being in the business of gathering massive amounts of people to the same space has its challenges, as you might expect. But we've got a great team that's done a wonderful job of creating the DevLearn experience that people expect and want, while at the same time adapting it in a way so that people can emphasizes the health and safety, and people can just feel comfortable being around one. We're looking forward to that.
Now, is there an element of this show for people who can't make it that's online?
We have a lot of different things. There's a lot of stuff going on in the industry right now about like hybrid events, and admittedly, we played a little bit in that when the pandemic first started, but we've shied away from that. We've shied away from the sense of like DevLearn is a face-to-face experience, and we have a number of other things that are going on that are online, because we have found that in our experience and my experience, both not only running the guild, but also as an attendee in different experiences, that for most of the hybrid events that are out there, you kind of get you can do face-to-face and or a virtual option, but you're getting a watered down version of both. Because if you're not fully focused on the face-to-face, like my son's school was a great example. He was out. He unfortunately got COVID, and he was out for a while. But they were still in a face-to-face class. But they were accommodating virtual learners. But essentially, what you had was there was a camera in the back of the room, and they turned it on. So they were structuring and building a face-to-face experience, but they just allowed virtual people to look in on it. And that's what I find a lot with the hybrid experiences is that either the virtual people are not going to be paid attention to and they're left behind, or the face-to-face people are getting less of an experience so that the virtual people can be accommodated. And we've decided, at least where we're at right now, that we are going to, if we're going to do a face-to-face event, we're going to be all in on the face-to-face event and soup to nuts look at it as an in-person experience and support it appropriately so that everyone gets the best in-person experience. And for all of the online events that we do, they're going to be online first. And we're going to look at it like when we had to do DevLearn last year, it wasn't just DevLearn online, it was the DevLearn digital experience. We looked at it and we said, what does it mean to be digital first? Not just taking the face-to-face conference and putting it online. What does it mean to be digital first? What can we do differently that starts from a digital space? And that enabled us to open up some new doors for what we did digitally. And that's when we go for our online events, we kind of look at it through that lens and say, let's do this digital first and not just assume that we're going to carry over a face-to-face experience. So DevLearn this year is face-to-face. We do have some online events throughout the rest of the year that are going to enable us to cater to the needs of those who aren't able to join us in person this year. We recognize this is an odd year for a lot of people, that some people aren't ready to travel. That's fine. Some people want to travel and just can't for one reason or another this year. So we have a number of online experiences that they have available to them over the months to
Well,
come that can
I,
meet those
I,
needs.
I can. Well, I'm sorry to jump in, but this topic is so interesting to me because I was just involved in 2 hybrid, and I can tell you they're very expensive, but because the association that where I'm director of innovation and science, what we had to do is we have a global audience. So in a good year, we'll have like 8 to 10,000 people. And then we had a conference in Houston. So we decided to do hybrid because companies would not support their employees going face to face.
Right.
But what happens? So we did hybrid. So we had pre-recorded things. We had people in face to face. We had the ones I was involved with their panels where you had people who were coming in, streaming in. They actually used vMix, and one of them last time they used Zoom in Denver. So so what was interesting is you'd sit in a panel and you'd look out and you'd see, or if you're in the audience, you see about, I don't know, 100 people in the audience all scattered out. And then you look at your app and you see like 300 people viewing from outside. So it was kind of demoralizing and some of the things they'd only have like 30 people in the room, but then there would be 100. It was super expensive, and then we recorded everything, but for on demand. So the positives is that we were able to get like 6,000 people. Now 2,000 were face to face, and 4,000 were out in the wild, and so at least you could get company and corporate sponsorship, and you didn't lose the companies that where the employees the professionals could not travel. But then the downside is the exhibitors were like, okay, this is pretty skimpy. And last year they were really disgusted because we went 100% online. This year was hybrid. So they're sitting there going, okay, what are you going to do next year? And so
that's one of, I mean, there's the front facing experience that the attendees have, but there's also the under the hood experience that is the running of an event like that people don't always see. And part of that is part of what you're describing there is something that needs to be looked at from an event producer standpoint. Who are all of the stakeholders that are engaged in the event, and what does success mean for them? And when you have a show like you're describing, like we have, that has an expo that exhibitors are coming because they want to promote their wares. The ability, when you offer a hybrid option, you're essentially giving people the option to not come to the show. And they do tend to look a little squinty at that unless you're finding a way to get at those people. Which admittedly is another reason from our standpoint that is a factor as to why we look at it. We separate the event that we're going to do a face-to-face event that is only face-to-face, and then we're going to do an online event that is digital first. And the exhibitors can make their choice as to which environment that they want to particularly participate in, either or both.
Now, David,
I think that's smart.
And David, did the economy kick in at all in terms of causing people not to go? 'Cause a lot of companies got hit pretty hard.
Sure.
Did you notice any change in that as far as people going, I want to go, but we can't afford it?
Yeah, there's definitely some impact on that. I mean, there's definitely on two sides. There's a number of aspects to it that are impacting people's ability to attend. I mean, there's beyond just the willingness of people feeling comfortable traveling yet. We understand that, but there are some companies that are just not yet back to business as usual, right, economically and in terms of their revenues, and they may not have opened up the ability to support employees being able to do that. It's a big part of the conference business. A lot of times it's part of people's professional development plans. The company supports them to do that. Mm-hmm. There are some companies that are out there that even if it's not a financial decision, it's a risk and reward decision, mm-hmm, which I understand as well. There are companies out there that have still made a policy of we are not doing employee travel yet. We're not comfortable with that yet. And they're going to continue to wait, and that's fine. We recognize from our standpoint that we knew going into DevLearn this year that we're just happy to have the event and to have the event be as large as it is in the context of the environment that we are. We're thrilled. But we completely understand that there are organizations that just aren't ready yet for a number of different reasons, be it financial, cultural, or other, and that's fine.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I really like
I mean,
that.
and there's a lot of organizations. There's a lot of organizations that are also. I humorously describe it, although it's the truth, that there's a lot of people who are like, I can't wait to travel, but can you go first so that I can make sure that it's okay? And I think that there's a lot of that going on in the conference industry right now, where a lot of, I mean, and I get it. There's a lot of people who want to see an event like DevLearn take place and see that people went, had a good time, and were safe and healthy, and they went back and it went okay. And they want to see that, and that's one of the reasons I'm really looking forward to DevLearn. There's a lot of reasons I'm looking forward to it, but one of the big reasons I'm looking forward to it is it's going to show the industry and anybody who wants to start traveling and go to events like this that they can take place. It is a safe environment for them to come, and they can come and while it's going to look a little different with the safety protocols we have in place for right now, it's enabling the people to gather and be with one another, which we also need right now, I think.
Well, I can tell you that the difference between hybrid, which was in Denver and then Houston and then in Denver was like 3 weeks ago. And then last week we had an event here in Tulsa that was 100% face-to-face. It's like exactly what you're talking about. Okay, so it was a regional event. So instead of having, 6,000 people, it was like 500. But it was all in a single hotel in the Hyatt and using the conference facilities, and had a small little exhibit hall baited with box lunches for lunch. And it was an amazingly uplifting experience. People were just before it.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Well, that's our music saying time is just about up. David, we hope you guys have a wonderful show. I wish we could go this year. We'll definitely be there next year. And have fun. Have a lot of fun, because they are fun events. DevLearn is my favorite of the conferences. It's a lot of fun to go to. And you do meet good people there. And I've always liked the energy in the show. It's got a lot of energy. People look like they're ready to learn, ready to invest, ready to do different things. So that's always fun.
Excellent. Yeah, we're looking forward to it. I mean, I look forward to welcoming you back next year.
Sounds great.
Well, thank you.
And if you haven't yet gone to DevLearn, or if you're kind of on the edge and you still go, have a good time, enjoy yourself. It really is a good show. There's always good presenters, and there's good vendors in the expo hall. So don't miss out. Anyway, well, have a good one. Safe travels to you, and we'll see you next year in person.
Sounds great. Thanks again for having me.
Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
And Susan, we'll see you next time. If you're watching the show, please subscribe. Give us any feedback. If you want to get a hold of David, we'll have information on how to do that below. And do check out the conferences from the Learning Guild. They're actually a lot of fun. Thanks. And that's a wrap.